My guest today is Karen Weary. She was trained as an elementary school teacher in Colorado, a licensed teacher in Colorado, Montessori public and private schools in that state, and then ended up moving to Oregon to the Rogue Valley to be a Montessori teacher in a private Montessori school in Oregon. This is an area, southern Oregon, about 4 hours from Portland, that I had a chance to visit recently because it is a growing hub of education entrepreneurship. And Karen is very much a part of that entrepreneurial ecosystem of out of system education options. She runs Mountain Montessori. It's a microschool, home-based microschool with about 7 students that she opened in the fall of 2021. And I'm just so happy to see you again, Karen, here on the podcast. It was wonderful to see your space in person and to meet you and see this cluster of education innovation in the Rogue Valley, kind of in the Medford, Grants Pass, Oregon area. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So I'd love to hear your backstory about how you got into education to begin with. You, as I said, got a degree in elementary education and taught in Colorado in public and private schools with a Montessori focus. When did you know you wanted to be a teacher?
Oh, forever ago. I started babysitting when I was 12, and I just knew being with students, being with children was my thing. It's what I did. I didn't have, your typical flipping burgers type of job when I was in high school or even college. I was always either babysitting or working in a daycare setting. And I knew going into it that I chose a college that was known for its College of Education. And so I just always knew that being an educator was going to be my thing. I just didn't know Montessori would be it.
Yeah. So then how did that go? I mean, I guess, were you ever teaching in a conventional classroom or did you go straight into Montessori? How did you come to alternative education and Montessori?
I graduated from college and I had my degree in education. I had a lower elementary teaching license and I subbed for a while in traditional schools. I thought that'd be a good way to just to get my name out there and be known and to gather experience and see the different grades. And I just never was quite ready to actually apply for a job. And so I moved to the mountains and during my summers of college, I guided horseback rides. And so after college, I went back and did that and they offered me a job to stay for the year. And I was like, well, I was really going to, do something in education. As long as I can have a couple days off during the week to sub, that would be great. And then after a year of that, everything changed and I had to go find another job. And I found an assistant job in a Montessori preschool. And I knew very quickly that Montessori was my missing link. Because I was thinking for a while, I'm like, man, this is really going to be a bummer if I have this whole degree in education and I don't ever teach. I just wasn't feeling that drive, that need to get into the classroom exactly. And then I found Montessori and that just opened my eyes to a whole new world of education. I found out that educating 3-year-olds is not my thing. So I was in a preschool classroom. So I went to the training the following summer after a year there. And thankfully I was hired into a public school that needed a lower elementary teacher in my town. And so I was able to go get my Montessori training and then go put it to use right away. And it's been amazing ever since. And it was scary at the time. I was young. I didn't know what I was doing. And there were no other elementary Montessori programs nearby. So I always questioned, like, am I doing it right? Is this what it's supposed to look like? I didn't know. I didn't have anything. And so it was quite a learning experience. But 17 years later, I think I was doing it right then. And I think I'm doing it right now. I hope.
So what was it that attracted you to Montessori? You said it was the missing link for you. What was
Montessori is so empowering to children. One of my favorite stories is a first grader who was in the private Montessori preschool classroom, did not get into the public Montessori classroom. And a 6-year-old boy within the first week of school went home and told his mom, Mom, school is so easy. You don't have to choose your own work. You just have to sit there and wait for the teacher to give you your next work. And so even a 6-year-old boy knew like could tell the difference in the two setups. That Montessori is, you can kind of see my shelves behind me. They're so full of materials and hands-on things that are there for the students to work with and to learn with. And they are empowered to go look at the shelf and see what do they want to do. And, you know, sometimes they want to do something that they're not ready for. And we have to have the conversation of, I'm so glad you want to do that. Before you're ready for that work, we have to work through these other steps to get you ready for it. And it's a mixed age level class. So the younger students are always watching the older students and getting excited by what they see. Most of my lessons are small group or one-on-one. And so sometimes I'll call students over for a lesson of something I know I have never taught them explicitly, but they come over, they're like, oh, Miss Karen, I know all about this. And they sit there and then they teach me what they've learned just by listening to the lessons happening in the classroom around them while they're in here. So I think it's empowering. The level of respect geared towards children in a Montessori class is so, it just goes to a different depth and a different level of these children are humans and they deserve the same respect that we would give any other adult. And so those are some of the things that just drew me in and made me excited that it wasn't just me standing at the front of the class delivering information to them.
So you have an interesting perspective, Karen, because you taught in both public Montessori schools and private Montessori schools. Now you run your own Montessori microschool. Was the sort of Montessori philosophy able to be retained within the public system? I'm always curious about how innovation within the system can happen, particularly in more of these learner-centered education approaches.
You know, at the time, I actually went back to school and got my master's degree in Montessori. And one of the things we talked about a lot during that program was what are the key aspects of Montessori? And if you put them, like if you were to get the Jenga game and write all these key aspects on the game of Jenga, how many pieces, and you know, set it up and play, how many pieces can you pull out and still have an authentic Montessori classroom? And so that really struck with me, and I felt concerned at the time that maybe what I was doing was not authentic Montessori, and maybe too many pieces were missing to really do it justice. And you know, we didn't have a big 3-hour uninterrupted work time, you know, which is a big thing for a lot of Montessori schools. And you know, kids got pulled out for different things and we had different things. But now looking back so many years later, I really think that what I was doing was Montessori. You know, I was following the children and you know, they were kind of moving through the work at their pace. And I think it was definitely different than the public education counterparts, which can still be amazing and give them the education they need. But I think that it was definitely Montessori. And I think that, you know, I really was able to get a lot done. And I was actually surprised from that public school. I went to a private school where I had a co-teacher. And so there were two teachers, like two trained teachers in one classroom. And at times I was really amazed that we didn't necessarily double the output of work that students were doing, you know, and I was always concerned before it, you know, were they getting enough Montessori? Were they getting enough work? Were they getting enough lessons? And even with a co-teacher, yes, we got more done and we could give more in-depth attention to students than I could do, you know, just me, but we didn't necessarily double anything with two of us. So yeah, I think it can be done. I think the other piece that really, it was a public school, so I had to do all the public school things. I had to do all the public school assessments. And I think that was an imperative piece of my background because I really got a good understanding of the data. What does the data show? How do I collect data? How do I understand where these children are based on data, not just my gut instinct? And so I think for me as an educator, that was kind of an imperative piece, because now I understand, I can understand the data and I can have my own personal observations and put that together to have a much better understanding of where each child is in their education.
So you were in Colorado for a long time, then you moved to Oregon. What was that experience like? What brought you to the Rogue Valley and to the Montessori school there?
Actually, my husband lost his job. And it was at the time we were horrified, but after you settle on it for a little while, we lived in suburbia Denver, which was great. We had our children there and my family was there, and it was just perfect timing for all of that. But we aren't really suburbia people. That's not where we wanted to be long term, and I just always thought having property and living in the country or living in the mountains would be a someday thing. Maybe when we're 70, we can afford to do that. Um, and so when he lost his job, I was like, hey, you could get another job here in Denver, but why do that? Let's look elsewhere. And so we did. He opened up his search, and through that process, one of the people he was interviewing with actually mentioned Medford, Oregon. So we hadn't heard of it. It wasn't on our radar or anything. And after that, we got on Zillow, I think, and we're finding, wow, we could actually afford property there. Um, and so he opened up that job itself didn't work out, but he started applying to other jobs around. And while he was job searching, I was also job searching, because being a Montessori teacher is a very specialized job. And if there's not a Montessori school, then there's no job for me. And so there are lots of places that he looked and had jobs that he might like, but did not have Montessori schools. And so I was like, there's no job for me there. And I always thought if I had to go to a traditional public classroom, I could, but that was not my first choice, nowhere near my first choice. And so when he actually got a job offer in Grants Pass, and so he took the job offer. There was a Montessori school in Medford, and I got on the website, and it said, that many of the current teachers there went there's children and like grew up in the school, came back and taught in the school. And I told my husband, I was like, there will never be a job there for me. Like, these people love this school and they stick with it forever. And so I was hoping maybe I would take a year off and be a mom. We had a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old at the time, and I didn't actually want to be a working mom anyway. So I was like, this could be great. I could take a year off and then figure out, my job. And my husband's like, will you please at least just send them a resume and reach out and connect? And so I did. And when my husband came out to have his interview, I was supposed to come with, only we had the child in the hospital. And so I had to email them and said, I'm so sorry, I'm not going to make that date that, we were going to connect. And they said, oh, that's such a bummer. We actually have a job opening. We were hoping to meet you. And I was like, what? That is not, I was just going to make a connection thinking maybe I could be there on their sub list or something for them, just get my foot in the door. And then my husband liked the job, which I was surprised about. It was a much larger company than we thought he would like. And so he got a job offer and came and looked at a house and liked it. And then a week later, I was actually at school at work, and I called the school after my husband got his job offer. I called the Medford Montessori and said, can I come to meet you guys like next week? We were going on to spring break. I thought that'll be perfect. They're like, well, we're going to be on spring break that week too. I said, can I come tomorrow then? And they're like, yes. So I literally booked a plane ticket at lunchtime, and I told school I had to leave. And I went home and I packed a bag and I got on a plane and came and looked at it. And they were like, you're so spontaneous. And I was like, please don't get that perception. I'm not, but this is a life decision for my family. And they offered me a job that weekend, and I liked the same house my husband did. And we just felt like it was meant to be. And we loved it. We have, we've got, a small piece of property here, and there's trees, and it's just working out beautifully.
I want to try to express how spectacularly beautiful this area of the country is. This Rogue Valley, which is near Medford, is sort of the major city, Grants Pass area, another town. And this is an area very kind of rural, but very entrepreneurial, and there's a real culture. It felt like to me of alternative education. So there's lots of Waldorf schools and the Montessori school that you taught at, both traditional kind of Waldorf and Montessori, but also these micro schools and emerging learning models that also kind of follow that same inspiration of child-centered learning and kind of moving past conventional standardized systems. And so I can see why you fell in love with that location, and it is just beautiful. Your plot of land is also stunning. So what was that like then when you kind of settled into that Montessori school? How did it compare to the schools that you were in Colorado?
The two entirely different communities. I was in a very well-off area of Denver. The school was in a very well-off area, and um, the school was thousands of dollars, like $15,000 or $16,000 a year to attend that school. And definitely not maybe my social background. And so I felt a little out of place there. Um, Actually at school every day, and then coming to Medford Montessori, it was a much smaller community, and I enjoyed the people, I enjoyed the families a lot, but their perception of education was not as what's the word, quite as forward thinking. They might not have had as much training, you know, beyond just the Montessori and teacher stuff, like all the extra trainings that you get all the time. Like there were some things lacking. And so it was very interesting because these two worlds almost collided, and I wasn't quite sure what to do. I thought I wanted, this a school setting where academics were a high priority, and how they reached them, was through all these trainings and all these understandings and all these things. But the school here really brought me back to that sense of love. And we teach because we love these children. And the way we love them is from our hearts, like we love our own children, not, it's not just my job. And I think I just believe that the world brings us what we need in life. And I don't think I realized I needed that per se, but I guess I did. And I got a nice healthy dose of that. And that was really, really wonderful for me. And I think that was an imperative piece of my being and of my process that I needed to be ready to start my own classroom here.
Yeah. So tell us about that evolution from being in the Medford Montessori traditional, private school there, or traditional Montessori private school there, to saying, I think I'll open a Montessori microschool. What was that path like for you?
It was difficult and it was fun. My children were struggling in life. My 3-year-old did not get kicked out of school, but I think he was on that path. I finally had the aha moment of, this is not working for him. He's not happy. I need to pull him out. The school I was at was about 45 minutes from home. And so we would leave in the dark in the mornings and get home in the dark in the evenings, 5 days a week. And I think the days were just too long for a little 3-year-old boy. And with such long commutes. So, it wasn't necessarily him. It was just, it didn't work for him. I was a very stressed out mommy. I was mean. I yelled a lot. I didn't like my parenting style. I didn't like that, we would rush home. They'd fall asleep in the car. By the time they'd wake up, dinner would be ready. And it's like, no, you need to eat because now you have to go right back to sleep. And I'm like, but when do we get to play? I just want to play with you, Mom. We didn't get to play. And so I was really struggling with our pattern as a family, and that yes, I got to be at school with my children and I got to see them throughout the day, but I didn't actually feel like the mom I wanted to be. And then we had COVID, and then I was home with them for a while, and I loved it. And I don't even remember when. I think one day I was driving to school. We went back after that first, bout of quarantine. We were able to go back to school in the fall in masks. And I was driving to school one day thinking, this is so silly. Why am I doing this? I could just teach from home. And I pondered on it for a couple days before I brought it up to my husband because I was like, that's kind of a crazy idea. Um, but for some reason, it just felt deep in my soul like, this is my path. I have to do this. I have to go this route. And I brought it up to my husband and I was like, I want to have this conversation. I'm being very real with you. Like, I actually think we should do this. This isn't just like a, flippant idea. And he said, okay, we can do that. And I was like, what? Like, you think we can do this too? And so we did. The space I'm in is our classroom, and it used to be an apartment. It's above our garage, and we gutted it. And that's so we spent that whole school year, working on this classroom space, ordering materials, building shelves, painting, redoing plumbing, all kinds of stuff. And started the school. And when we started, I had 2 students plus my own. And it was so small. And I just, even though it was small, I was hoping to reach a few more students than that. I still just believed in my soul, like, this is my path. I don't know why. I don't know, like, the reason. I never wanted to own a school. I never wanted to be an administrator. I just love the classroom. I love being with the students. And it felt right. And so it's scary. It's different than, just being the classroom teacher. And being a teacher is a lot of work. And now I also get to be, the janitor, and I'm buying all the supplies, making sure I've got, toilet paper. There are days when the students come out of the bathroom, Miss Karen, we don't have any toilet paper. So, and it's like, so thankfully that we're right on our property. So I run to the house and get some more. It's just a different level. It's different things to think about and to process, and the marketing piece and the advertising piece. And, it's a lot more. But man, my commute is amazing. I walk out the door and students show up at my house. We live in this beautiful area and they come here, and it's just amazing. And now it's a much smaller class than, what you would find in a school. And so before I felt like I had the skills to support these students, but I didn't have the time. I could give one child a lot of attention, but then I had 24 children waiting patiently or impatiently for me, to come back to them. And so I feel like I can really support the students emotionally, socially, academically, on all the levels, that I didn't have the ability to do in a larger classroom setting.
Yeah, and I was struck when we talked in person, when you explained, that long commute and those long days for your son, and how you weren't feeling great about your parenting, and then opening your own microschool, just how much happier you were and they were, and this whole experience. I think that's what I took away from it. Did you feel that way too? That
Absolutely.
it was, yeah.
I'm a different person now than I was when I was doing that long commute. I still love my job. I still love those students. I didn't dislike anything there. It's not like something at the school drove me away. It was that I couldn't be the person I wanted to be. I couldn't be the mom I wanted to be. And now I am. I mean, I'm far from perfect. I've got as always, as most of us, I've, still got a lot of things to work on. I think I'll always be working on, trying to be a better parent, but I'm not exhausted to the core like I was then. There's light in my days, and I'm just lighter. And I think my own children realize that, and we get to play more and spend time outside and walk around our property, and we just get to be together. And so I feel like this is a great combination of being a working mom, supporting my children and supporting my family, financially.
Yeah. And do you feel that that's sustainable for you? Sort of the financial model of leaving,
I don't
leaving
know.
a job to be an entrepreneur, right?
I have to be honest, at this point, it is scary every year. Like, it's scary every time. So the exciting thing is, last year when I started with 3 students, I ended the school year with 6 students. And so I doubled over the course of the year. So even during the year, I was still able to get more students. This year it's been an interesting wave of students in and out. But I did have a total of 9 students, at one point throughout this year. And so I just keep going on a wing and a prayer, and that feeling that this is the right thing for me to be doing,
Mm.
that it's going to work out, that students will come and that we'll be able to make it financially. I hope that after a few years, there'll be people waiting to get in that can't get in, and then I'll feel much better about it, and not just completely hoping. We live in a small rural area, and the tuition is expensive. It's not like that Metro Denver expensive, but it's expensive, I think. But it's the only way that I can have a small class and support my family financially well enough, to make it worth our while, and to have the funds to run the school. And so I don't know.
Yeah.
That's one of my big concerns.
Yeah. And you, like many of the other out of system education entrepreneurs in the Grants Pass area, are recipients of a VELA Education Fund microgrant that really supports non-traditional learning models and entrepreneurs like you who are creating them. So it's great to, again, see that kind of ecosystem of entrepreneurship bubbling up in this beautiful part of the world. So how do your families find you, Karen, and why are they attracted to your home-based microschool, Montessori inspired microschool?
Yeah, what I'm finding, I started with one family that we had talked over the years. I didn't know them well, but we connected, a few times a year. And they had small children, and they didn't necessarily want to put them in the local public schools. And I didn't either. And at the time I was commuting. And so when I had the idea, I went and talked with them. I was like, so I want to do this thing, and you guys don't really want put your kids in the public school. Like, could we get together and do this? And they were very excited. And they shared, everybody that they knew that had small children, they shared their information with me. And I just made these phone calls and said, hey, I got your name. I want to share with you, I'm doing this thing. I didn't actually get many children that way. But there are some local Facebook groups that I advertise on. There's a local email list that I advertise on. I put flyers up at all the local stores. But I'm finding that the best way that I'm actually getting students is through word of mouth. When parents go back and they're talking to their friends, that are moms, that's how it's actually happening. So I'm trying to be very patient. When you're small, word of mouth spreads slowly, but it still spreads. And so I just keep putting myself out there as much as possible, and hoping that's one of my big things. I think that's an area that I need to continue to learn and grow in. I feel like my specialty is within the classroom,
Yeah.
and not necessarily marketing. So I built a website the only way I knew how, and I put it out there, and I don't know.
Yeah. Blending that, your role as an educator and now kind of discovering this whole world of entrepreneurship and business and marketing and all of the steps that it takes to run a successful small business, adds that layer of challenge, but I'm sure also it's a good challenge, especially where you feel like you're doing something that's fully aligned with your passions and your belief in how education can be. And what are you hearing from some of your parents, like in terms of how satisfied are they? What are sort of the changes that they see in their kids from going to Mountain Montessori?
The families that have been really vocal about it have been so appreciative. There is a community of families out here that want to homeschool, and some want to homeschool but don't necessarily want to be their child's teacher. So I think, they're looking for something in between. And I think that this offers that home feeling, because it's so small, and maybe because I'm a mom, they really get that, mom home, feeling. But I'm also an educator, and then they come in there with a community of children where they just get to be children and have that social connection time. We really build a family here. And most families that I've talked to are really happy with it. I'm a pretty academic program because we meet for a few hours and only 4 days a week. I feel like there's a lot that we need to get done in that time. So we have 7 acres to play on and we spend lots of time out there playing, but we also do a lot of academic work. And I think most families out here are happy about that because most families out here live this life. They live in the country as well. They have their gardens. They do their outside things. Like they already do a lot of that themselves. And so they aren't necessarily looking for that for their child's education. They're actually looking for something academic, but following their child and really, taking their own individual child into consideration and not just, one in a class of 25 and, one specific grade level where we're all learning this, whether this is what this child needs or not. So I think families really appreciate that. And they've been very, very kind and very loving in their words of letting me know how thankful they are and how happy their children are here and how much they're growing. And, one mom was just telling me the other day, she has a first grader who's a great reader, but at home wasn't really interested in chapter books and like at Christmas time. And now she's like, now he wants nothing but chapter books because in class, all the other older readers are reading chapter books with me. And so when I gave him, after he finished one book, I gave him the option of a chapter book or another picture book. And he excitedly chose the chapter book. And because he sees it here, he's surrounded by it. That's what everyone else is doing. So he wants to do it too. And now he went home and he's excited to read chapter books at home with his family. And so they see a lot of things like that. They're seeing a lot of academic growth in their children, and their children love having friends. That was my biggest concern when I was a class of 3 children is that's not quite a big enough social group. There are a lot of challenges. We had this, the ages were spread out and there are a lot of challenges, but now that we're a little bigger, there's enough. They can play with a variety of children. They don't have to play with the same ones every day, but a lot of times they do. A lot of times the whole group of them is off playing together. So at this point, the families that have been here have all been super happy. They've all been spreading the word to their families. The children, love coming to school every day. And so for me, that's enough.
And what about financial accessibility? Typically, microschools are less expensive on average than traditional private schools, but still can be financially out of reach for some families. What does that look like for you? What do you think about as you think about growth in the future there?
I have had some families reach out and ask, about scholarships or ask about state funding. And at this point, it hasn't been an option because I've been so small. There hasn't been enough buildup for that. It's definitely something I want to look into. I think that all children that I cross paths with come to me for a reason. Either I have something that I can give them that they need in their lives, or they have something that I can learn from them, that I need in my life. And I don't want to be like an elitist thing. I don't want to be like, you have to have money to be here, but I don't know how else to go about it. Right. I don't know how to reach the families to make it financially feasible. We're very lucky in the state of Oregon. There's one school district that is doing that supports homeschoolers, and the children are enrolled within the school district, and within that they are provided money to be used for their homeschooling their children. And so I am a vendor with them, and so that has been really nice for some families, that they can get reimbursed some of their tuition, so that makes it much more available. However, that program is pretty full, and I think it's hard to get into. It's not like, oh, just go there. They take everybody. They're full at capacity at some point as well. So I'm actually part of an education working group here in the Applegate Valley, and we are, questioning, like, can another thing like that be started? Is there a person or a group or, somebody that would or could do something like that, and we have a lot of interesting conversations of what does education look like here in our valley, and how can we expand it, and how can we make more options available to more people. So I think that's part of my growth to come, is figuring out how I can reach more families, because I know there's a lot of children that would do really, really well in this setting that they can't afford it. Um, and I don't want to grow very big as well at the same time. 10 is my maximum number. 8 and 9 felt like a really good number in our space. It's just me and them. And so I want to reach as many children as possible, and I don't want it to get too big all at the same time.
Yeah. So what does the future look like, do you think? You've been operational now for about a year and a half. What in 5 years does Mountain Montessori look like, do you think?
I have no idea. I just keep telling myself to stay open. I didn't know. I would have never guessed, even a year before I had the idea for this, I would have never guessed that I would be teaching from home. Like, it wasn't on my horizon. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a direction I wanted to go. And it fell into my lap. I believe it was a gift of COVID, that I, was hoping more people wanted something different for their children. And I believe, because of my openness, that it worked, that I had the idea and we made it happen. And now I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the future holds. I'm happy here. I love it. And I could keep doing this forever. I mean, I could keep doing this for the next 30 years, and be very happy. So I'm just continuing to stay open to what life brings, and take it 1 year at a time. My long-term goal at this point is, at this moment, I would say I'll still be doing this in 5 years. Hopefully I'll have a wait list and people will love it and they'll just want to be here. And I won't have to stress every spring, like, will there be children for next year? Can we afford this? Can I stay home? For two students, it's really hard to make ends meet. So that would be a blessing for me, just to know that there are enough children, enough families that want this and can afford it and can make it happen for them. But I'm just staying open, just see what rolls my way.
Well, and it seems like there's a lot of momentum in your area for these, not only alternative education, like I said, there have been these sort of established child-centered schools like Waldorf and Montessori, but now this really growing cluster of out-of-system models, hybrid homeschools, microschools, learning pods, all sorts of different innovations. And that seems to be growing. And do you feel that way too?
I do. And I wonder, I'm new to it. So I've been wondering, does it feel like it's growing because I'm suddenly immersing myself in it, or is it really growing? But it's interesting as well. I've had a lot of parents be like, maybe you could expand, because when children age out here after third grade, the big question is, where do they go? And my third graders aging out of my own program. And that's a big question. What next? I don't know. We're in that time of making that decision. And a lot of people are like, you should expand, you should grow. I'm like, yeah, but then it's not the same. Then it deters. And if I do it somewhere else, there might be other places I could do the same thing. And what we do from day to day in the classroom might look similar, but it changes. It just changes the look of what our day is like. And, when children are literally running through the woods and, carrying trees around as horse skeletons, that, they're playing wolves, and, they're carrying these horse skeletons around because that's what they're eating. Like, you don't find that kind of play and that same thing in a bigger setup. So I, as a mom, would be curious for more things. And I hear a lot of, in our area specifically, I hear a lot of need for options for older children, for middle school and for high school. And there seem to be, more options for the ages that I'm in right now, and fewer as they're getting older. And so it would be really nice in our valley to see that grow and to see the options grow. And I know that there is a community part of this education working group, and just other locals that want that as well. So I think things are moving. There's that push to move it, and we'll see what happens.
exciting to see. I'm looking forward to keeping track of the growth there and more entrepreneurs building new models or expanding existing models. And then that um, collaboration among the different entrepreneurs there, so that maybe your program ages out at third grade, but then the kids are able to go into a like-minded program nearby that someone else is running, and just great to see what's possible there.
And
So
it's fun because I don't see myself as competing, with any of these others. I see myself as offering something that moves me and I think is great for children and some families want, and others doing something that moves them and is different than what I'm doing. And each child is different. We're looking at that with our own children. Like we have two children, maybe they're going to go separate directions, different schools, because each one is a different person and a different being. And so it's nice, even though there are options at this age. It's I want to feel like that collaborator with the other locals that are doing the same thing, and not against them, but with them.
So Karen, how can my listeners and viewers learn more about your work, connect with you, be inspired more by what you're building?
I have a website, and that's the biggest way. I don't have a Facebook group yet. I do, but it's just for these families. Should I say the website now?
Yeah,
Post it up later?
share your website URL with us.
The website is sites.google.com/view/mountain-Montessori.
I love it.
Kind of long.
We'll put a link in the show notes.
Yeah, I think that's one of my things that is my learning, is how do I get a different website domain?
But like you said, you're just your passion is in the classroom as an educator, and you're kind of filling in the blanks as a small business owner as well, and really putting your priorities to your students and the families that you serve, and not so much on the website.
Yes.
Yeah, but at least you have that presence, and folks can connect with you there.
I do, and it's fun because there are pictures of students working. That's my favorite part, is our work time in the classroom together. And so I have a bunch of pictures of students up there on the website, so you really get a feel for, what does it look like, day to day? What are the children doing? How does it feel? And I feel like you get that just by looking at those photos.
Well, I wish you so much luck and joy continuing to run Mountain Montessori, and I'm looking forward to continuing to see where this goes for you and for other entrepreneurs in your area. Karen Weary, thank you so much for being on the Liberated podcast.
Thank you for having me today. I appreciate it. It was great to be part of this.